Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how you're going to create your realistic gourd or seed pod. Most all objects need to be hollowed out unless they're really tiny. You can make these solid, okay? Otherwise, you're going to hollow them out just like you guys made your pumpkin. So you kind of determine the size of your object, and you get that clay, put the extra clay back in the bag, don't let it sit out at your table. And the easiest thing to do is to make a ball and then make another pinch pot, just like we did with the tea bowls, just like we did with the pumpkin. So you're going to make a pinch pot form like this. Make sure it's about the thickness of your pinky, and then you're going to close the form. So just a reminder of how we did with this with the pumpkin. I take my fingers and thumbs and I'm making a hollow form. So I need to make a hollow form if it's much thicker than my thumb. Now I'm going to look carefully at the object. And the reason I gave you seed pods and gourds is because you do need to look carefully at them because you're not used to what they are. So I'm going to look carefully at its form and do things like pat it and start to shape it. Now to give it more shape, I tell you not to add a lot of water to clay, but this is when you would. You just get your fingers wet and kind of pull on it. You can roll it. This is where you might need the slab mat if the clay is really wet. So I'm trying to get this kind of cone shape. So if I get my hands wet, I can kind of pull it to stretch the clay out and get it wet. I can roll it. I can pat it. So I'm not going to add all these tiny details quite yet. I'm getting the basic form of the seed pod. Okay, then I can see how the holes might be made. So I can use my thumb, my finger. If you want to borrow some tools that you don't have in your kit, they're on the counter over there, like loop tools, other tools that you can use to kind of cut and press. Look really carefully because like the edges are bent up. So you might be able to do some of this when it's really plastic wet clay, and then some of it you might have to wait till it's more leather hard. So I can kind of get these general impressions done, but then I might want to put it by the fan and let it firm up to carve out. Also look carefully at the texture. So remember, your tip of your needle tool is not good. You should use the edge of it to create your lines if you're creating the lines on the form. So look really carefully at your object. If you really are struggling with it, it is totally okay to squish it and try again because you've probably never sculpted anything from life ever out of clay. So you're just going to practice trying to create your form. That is for a lotus pot. If you are using something like this one, you still need to make that pinch pot form before you start slipping and scoring on the other parts. So you would start with your basic pinch pot, about a pinky thick. If it's too hard to close like this, you can also slip and score a flat piece of clay on top. So you have to get your basic hollow form going and get it into its shape by rolling it, patting it, shaping it. You don't want to squish it all the way closed because you don't want to trap any air. Then for all the little textures, remember that you have to slip and score that stuff on. So you would make the basic shapes of it. If your slip is dry, just add a little water to it. And when you're done, make sure you put the lid on tight. That's why it dries out, is because kids don't put the lid on tight. Okay, so any pieces, you would need to add slip and score both sides. So remember, it's score, slip, attach, smooth. So for something like that, you would do that. Now, they will both need air holes in them. It's super important that they have air holes in them. There's directions on your table for that. You guys have a lot of different objects. So for example, the gourd, that's a little unique. So I'm going to show you the gourd. If you have the gourd that you're doing with a shape like this, especially with the stem, you're still going to start with the pinch pot form for the bottom part of it. So just like we've been doing with the pumpkins and with the tea bowls, you start with the pinch pot. Make sure it's about your pinky thickness. And you close the form. And just like with the pumpkin stem, you can start to build the stem up. For the gourd, it's not quite long enough, so then I would need to get more clay, and I would need to slip and score that stem on. So you're trying to make it as close to the object as you can. So like I said, you'll probably start this today and then work on it more tomorrow and Thursday and Friday. So it's really important that anything you attach to your form, you slip and score on your piece. Again, it can be helpful to get it wet. This is going to look gross. But if you pull on it a little, with a little bit of water on it, it'll really stretch it and help you bend it without it cracking to start to get some of that. For these lines, you would again roll out some clay and slip and score some of that on, and the bumps and things like that. So anything you attach, you must slip and score. So then you have to take your needle tool and put that needle tool, not just a dot, that does nothing. It needs to go, I'd use the fat end, it needs to go all the way to the air pocket. You'll feel it. If Mr. Chamness and I cannot get a needle tool in there before we put it in the kiln, we'll not fire it because it'll blow up. So don't rush. This is not done. Sometimes you have to make it and then put it by the fan and let it firm up and work on something else at your table with clay and then add more details to it. You probably won't finish it today, but you really want to try to get it as close to the object as you can. If you hate the objects on your table, feel free to walk around and borrow some from a different table. These are just for reference. They're actual seeds and seed pods. Don't ask me what plants they're from. Maybe you could guess. But I put those there for reference, but you're going to actually have to look at the object on your table and sculpt from life the best you can. Okay? So go ahead and get out your toolkits and start sculpting.